So, check this out, people. I want to talk about something that a lot of people don't talk about, especially parents, men, women, even, because this doesn't just happen to men, it happens to women also. When you have children and you allow someone else to raise them, you allow the babysitter to raise them, the nanny, your neighbor, the school, anyone, the streets, and this child grows up, right? You can't expect this kid, this daughter or son, to love you, or at least not the way a normal son or daughter loves his mother, because children are not born loving people. And I know that doesn't make any sense. None of us are born that way. It's a fact that if you mistreat a child as he grows up, he's going to be a menace to society. He's not going to be able to hold on to a relationship. He's not going to be normal. That's a fact. Our children are the product of our creation. Our children are products of their environment. And if they are born and raised into a toxic environment, then they're going to be toxic. It's not their fault. When a man grows up to be a murderer, when a man grows up to be an abusive husband, an abusive father, most of the time it goes back to his parents. And this doesn't just go for men. There are women who are abusive to their children. There are women who don't know how to handle conflict. There are women who don't know how to be wives to their husbands. They don't know how to hold on to a relationship because they are a product of their environment. And you have mothers who are independent mothers because that's what women want to be, independent. American women, they want to prove to the world that they can be like men. And the fact is that a woman can never be like a man, ever. I don't care what the nonsense is out there. I don't care if people think I'm misogynistic by saying these things. The fact is that nature created us this way. God created us this way. And in nature, the male is the one who protects, and it is the female who nurtures. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with me. Whether I agree with that fact or not, it doesn't change the facts. And you can hate what I'm saying, but the facts are the facts. And you can't argue with facts. You cannot argue with the truth, whether I'm saying it or someone else is saying it. Now, there are women who want to be independent and want to raise children out of wedlock. They want to raise children without a man. They mistreat their man, a good man who may be there for them, who's willing to be there for her children, his children. I can't speak for every country. I can only speak for the country that I was born and raised in. And so I speak about America mainly. Now, women want to be independent. They want to have children. They want to have a husband. They don't want to have a husband because they're in love with a man and they want to be in a family. They don't marry a man because they want to have a family and share a family and grow old together. Most women who marry do it for the wedding. They do it for the clout. They do it to show off. They do it to say, I'm having a wedding. They don't do it to be involved with the man they're with. They don't do it to raise a family with this man. They simply do it to show off. Now, if a woman marries a man, most of the time when a woman marries the man, it's the woman who later on applies for the divorce. It's the woman who later on becomes disillusioned. It doesn't matter if the man is good. It doesn't matter if the man goes to work every day. Women always find an excuse for why she doesn't want to be with this man. There's always some bull, there's always some nonsense. And most of the time, when women get divorced, it's not because they have a bad man in their life. It's simply because they want a different man. A man who may be more aggressive, more attentive, less aggressive, less attentive. There's always some bull, some nonsense for why a woman wants to leave her husband. And it's never for reasons that make any sense. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't women who are mistreated by their husbands. Women who are mistreated by their husbands have every right to be happy, to want to be happy. A woman, just like a man, has every right to want to be happy. But the fact is that most divorces end because women are disillusioned. They simply wanted the wedding. They didn't consider the man. They didn't consider whether the job he had was something she was willing to live with long term. They didn't consider the fact whether or not his height was a factor, whether he was too short, too tall, too big, too small. They just consider the wedding. Now, if a woman can be with a man for 3 years, if a woman can live with a man for 5 years, then she can live with that man for the rest of her life. Why marry someone that you've been with for 3 years, 5 years, and then after you get married, you decide he's not the one you want to be with? Most of the time, when a man marries a woman, he does it for life. When a man has children with a woman and he wants to be there for that woman, it's usually the woman who decides in the end whether or not she wants to stay. And this is why the majority of women back home in the US are single parents and the babysitter is raising her children. This is why many women back home in the US have children from multiple men and they find themselves alone at a very young age, not because the man left, but because they're irresponsible. I'm a man, and I don't stand up for losers. I don't stand up for men who don't handle their business, for men who don't take care of their business. Every one of my friends that I have are married with families of their own, with children of their own. They live with their wives, they work full time, they support their wives, they support their children, they support their family. I don't hang out with bums. I don't hang out with men who spend their days playing video games all day and have children who they don't support. I don't hang out with those bums. Every one of my friends either have businesses of their own and have families or work full-time jobs, regardless of what the job is, to support their family. I don't support bums. So when I talk about these women who leave their husbands or leave their men, I am speaking about the men who are good men, who are supportive to their wives, to their girlfriends, to their mothers, to their children, to their family. These are the men I speak about because I don't know no other man. I don't hang out with bums. And so when a woman gets married or when a woman has children out of wedlock, they tend to have children by men who they have one night stands with. They tend to have children with men who they've only known for a few months. And then they wonder why the man doesn't stay because you had a child with a man you didn't know. You had a child with a man who had no intentions of staying with you. A man will take it from you if you give it to him. In the end, the woman holds the keys to her door, and a man will only come in if you open that door for him. And if a woman has a child out of wedlock, it is her fault. It is not the man's fault. I don't care what the excuse is. I don't care what you hear. The man is always being blamed. The fact is, women, that you hold the key, you hold the power, and if you don't open your legs and allow a man in, he will not come in. If you don't ask him to put on a condom, he's not going to put it on. If you don't tell him not to come inside you, and if you don't take birth control, if you're not responsible, it is your fault. Your fault. I have 4 daughters, and if they have children by bums who don't take care of their family, it is their fault. It is her fault because she allowed a bum inside her and didn't vet him, didn't take the time out to get to know him. And so now she's going to be stuck as an independent mother, having to have someone else watch her children while she works a full-time job. And then wonder why her teenage son or daughter doesn't respect her, but respects the babysitter, doesn't want to be around her mother, doesn't miss her mother, but misses the babysitter, misses their friends, because the mother decided to be irresponsible and have children out of wedlock with some bum that she met 2 or 3 months ago, not knowing what this man is capable of. And now she's an independent mother who has to rely on others to help her raise her child when that is not how nature intended it to be. That is not how God intended it to be. Because every animal nurtures their children, even crocodiles who are vicious and mean nurture their offspring. Even crocodiles protect and support their offspring. Ants, bees, spiders nurture and support their offspring. They don't give birth to their children and then pass these children on to some strange insect, strange animal to have that animal or that insect nurture their child. Nature doesn't work that way. God never intended it to be that way. And the only animals, the only creatures that have children and pass those children on to someone else are human beings. We are the only ones who abort our children. We are the only ones who give away our children. We are the only ones who allow others to raise our children. And this is why society is falling apart. This is why our children grow up and continue the same patterns that our parents had. Because you can only raise a child, or a child will only grow up the way you raise him. And a child needs both parents. When a woman raises a child on her own, the odds of that kid growing up to be responsible are very slim. But when a man raises a child on his own, the child has better odds of holding a job when he's being raised by a responsible father. This child has a better odd of holding a good job, raising a good family, and being a good father or daughter. A child needs a man in their life. They need a man in their life. A daughter needs his father. A son needs his father. And if his father isn't involved, if both parents aren't involved, there are going to be issues in this child's life. There are going to be issues. And if you're not ready to have a child, you shouldn't have one. You shouldn't be so selfish to say to yourself, I want a baby. I want a baby. I just don't want a man in my life. You want to raise your child the way your mother raised you. Because when I was growing up, there was never a man in our lives. I only knew one family out of the 10 families that I was growing up around who had a father in their life. And they had everything compared to all the other children who were being raised by a single mother. That family had everything because they had a father who worked. They had a father who taught and instructed his children. They had a father who protected them and who stood by them. And this is why they had everything compared to all the other children. And then when our children grow up and they don't love us and they don't respect us, especially our mothers, right? They wonder why. They want to question themselves. What did I do wrong? What you did wrong is dropping your daughter off or your son off to the babysitter up until he was 12 or 13. And you allowed someone else to raise your child. That's what you did wrong. Because a child needs his mother. And unfortunately, because you're a single mother, you have to work full time to support your child. And someone else has to raise your child. You are an irresponsible mother. You are an irresponsible woman. If you can't have a child, don't have it. If you cannot afford to have a child, don't bring one into this world. Be responsible. If you're not married to a man who's there for you, who's been there for you before you married him, don't marry him. If you want to have children with your husband. Have children with a man that's been there for you, regardless of how bad times have gotten. Because in the end, you're the mother. You can't blame a child for growing up to be a bum if the mother is a bum, if the father is a bum. And what's a bum? Someone who has children and refuses to take care of them. Who, for example, the courts decide how much child support the father pays when he's not in the picture. The courts decide that he has to pay child support. And when the courts take money from his paycheck every week, he has the nerve to say, I pay child support. I pay child support. Bro, you don't pay nothing. The courts take your money. And there's a difference between you paying child support and the courts forcing you to pay. There's a difference between you paying child support and you being forced to pay. Because a man who pays child support doesn't need the courts to be involved. A man who pays child support visits his children regularly. He picks up his children regularly. He puts his children before his girlfriend, before his mother, before his friends, before his family. His children come first. And that's how a man pays child support. Support is not just money. You got to be involved with your children. Our children are important. And when they grow up and you're sick and you're dying and your son or daughter never showed up to the hospital while you were sick, your son or daughter never showed up to the hospital while you were dying, they never showed up to your funeral, they never showed up to your burial, it is because you raised them not to miss you. You raised them not to love you. When I was growing up, I didn't know children were supposed to love their parents. I didn't know this because my mother was abusive. My mother didn't teach us how to brush our teeth, how to tie our shoelaces, how to comb our hair. We had to figure this out as time went on. And as time went on, I made a lot of mistakes. Mistakes that I continued to make because I had no one to instruct me in my ways so that when I grow up, I do not depart from those ways. Ways that are necessary for a child to have so that when he's older, he's able to take care of himself and his family. And this is how children are being raised today. We want someone else to change our children's diapers. We want someone else to breastfeed our children. We want someone else to give our children the bottle. We want someone else to instruct our children. And then when our children are not there for us, we want to know why. And the fact is, ladies, because you weren't there for your children. The fact is, gentlemen, because you weren't there for your children. In the end, when you're not there for your children, you're going to get old. You're going to look for those children. You're going to look for your grandchildren. And your child is not going to want you around. He's not going to care to have you around. She's not going to care to have you around because they don't want you around. They don't want you around because you were never there. And they don't want you to give off that vibe to their children. They don't want you to influence their child, your grandson or your granddaughter, the way you raise them. They don't want that vibe around their children. And so when you grow old, you're going to grow old alone. Why do American men and women put their parents in a nursing home? Why do they do that? Because here in the Philippines, they don't do that. The elderly parents grow up with their children, the majority of them. Yeah, there are exceptions, just like anywhere in the world. Just like anywhere, there are exceptions. But the majority of people here take care of their parents when they grow old. You know why that is? Because in the Philippines, the basis of their whole existence are their children. The basis of their whole existence are their parents. You can see the difference here compared to back home in the US. There is a clear difference. And when American children grow up, they don't want to be responsible for a mother who wasn't responsible for them. They don't want to be responsible for a father who wasn't responsible for them. Because in the end, you reap what you sow. What goes around comes around. And our children matter. In the end, you're going to wonder why you're lonely. In the end, you're going to feel lonely. You're not going to understand why. You're not going to know why. But I'm telling you why. And it's not because Santa Claus is coming to town. And neither are your children. The reason why you're lonely, how could you feel lonely? How could a person who has children feel lonely? How? Because I raised 4 daughters. 3 of them I raised part-time. Their mother raised them full-time for a while. I raised them full-time for a while. She raised them part-time with my help, and I raised them part-time with her help. We were always involved with our children. And though God knows I was not the perfect father, I wish I were. I made a lot of mistakes. But I was always involved with my children. I didn't want my children to experience the life that I experienced. And so, when my children were around, there was never a day that I felt lonely. Because children fulfill us. It is in the nature that God instilled in a parent to be fulfilled when we do our job for our children. It isn't a job that should come hard for any of us. If animals instinctively know how to nurture their children, why is it so difficult for us humans to nurture our children? Why is that so hard? This is why we feel alone. This is why there's so much depression in America. All you have to do is look. Don't take my word for it, people. Look for yourselves. How many women have you met? How many women have you dated who have men, or rather children from multiple men, who are single parents, who were married and divorced, not because the husband divorced them, but they divorced the husband before the child can even hit 17, 18 years old. I'm not making this stuff up, people. You may not want to hear it from me. You may not want to hear it from anybody. And that's the problem. Nobody's saying it. Nobody's talking about it. And this is why women are so depressed. You're depressed because instead of focusing on your children, you're focusing on the next man. You're focusing on the next dating app. You're focusing on the next sugar daddy. How about you focus on your children and watch your life change? How about you focus on your children and watch your life change, not for the worse, but for the better? Because any woman who dedicates her life to her children will never be alone, ever, because those children will always be there to have her back. They will always be there to take care of her. They will always be there to support her. They will always be there to make sure that she has everything she needs, and they will always stand by her the way my children stand by their mother and the way my children stand by me. In the end, you reap what you sow, and if you sow bad kids, you're going to reap bad men and women. It is your job, ladies, to tend to your children. It is your job, ladies, to handle your business at home and be women, not independent women, free of men, free of motherhood, but rather women who understand that a child needs both parents, both, not one, but both. And if you're not ready to have a child, with a man who's responsible, a man who's willing to be there, don't have one. Because if you do, you're no different from any man who has a child, who gets a woman pregnant and then disappears on her and refuses to take care of that child. You're no different from that bum because he's a bum and so are you if you decide to have a child and then reject the man that's willing to be there for that child and for you. Because in the end, children need their father. And these independent, ignorant, stupid women who continue to have children out of wedlock wonder why there's so much depression in the country. They wonder why they have to put their children on medication. They wonder why. Just look at a child who has both parents, how happy they are, how different it is. Now, of course, there are exceptions. There are exceptions to every rule. Not every parent, not every couple is willing to raise their children properly. Not every couple does the right thing. But the majority of people who love their children do. And unfortunately, we live in a society that allows our women, that allows our daughters to grow up to be hoes, skanks, and chicken heads who are not responsible. And these bad habits our daughters are not born with. They are instilled in them. They are taught by these independent, lonely women who have no husbands, who blame everything on men because they don't know how to vet a man and choose the right man. When they find a good man, he's either too short, he doesn't make the right money, though he's willing to dedicate his life for her. She wants a man who's aggressive, a man who drives a fancy car, who looks good or who she looks good on his arms rather than the man who's good for her. Women are selfish. The majority of women, the majority of American women are selfish. This is why they're alone at 35. There's an exception to the rule. There are women who are alone who don't deserve to be alone. There are mothers who are great mothers who don't deserve to be alone but are because of their irresponsible partner. Things happen, bad things happen to good people, just like good things happen to bad people. In the end, you have to make it work. If you don't make it work, our children will suffer. Your children will suffer. And when you grow old, you are going to regret your life. Our life starts from the moment we have the concept to understand right from wrong. From the moment we are able to choose to make the right decision, that's when our life begins. When you're able to decide right from wrong. And once you're able to make those choices and understand what's right from wrong, and you choose to be an irresponsible mother, it is your fault when you grow old and you're alone and you wonder why you're depressed and you wonder why nobody wants you. When you don't love your blood, your children, how can you love a man who isn't your blood? How can you love someone who just got here yesterday? How can a woman reject her children, give her children away, give her children to the babysitter so she can go out every other night to meet a man and then wonder why a man doesn't stay? A man doesn't respect a bad mother. A man is smart. He's just not going to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you. If you don't love your children, how are you going to love me? If you don't respect your children, how are you going to respect me? If you're not there for your children, how are you going to be there for me? You don't think about that, ladies? And then you wonder why you're alone? Then you wonder why no man wants you? A man doesn't want you because you have children. A man doesn't want you because you don't handle your business, because you don't take care of your children. You know how sexy and attractive it is when a woman chooses her children over some bum, over some man that she met yesterday, and refuses to turn her back on her children for some guy. You know how happy this woman is going to grow. Doesn't matter how alone she is, she's never going to be unhappy because her joy comes from her children. Her joy comes from being a good mother. And if you, being evil, know how to give good things to your children, how much more God is not willing to give good things to those who ask Him? How can you come boldly before God and pray and ask Him for a good man when you're a bad mother? How can you come boldly before God and ask Him to give you good things when your child is hungry? You don't have the sense to make them a sandwich. Your child shouldn't have to ask you for food. Your child shouldn't have to ask you to change their diaper. You should know this like clockwork. Unfortunately, mothers are no longer mothers. They're being taught in school to be independent. They're teaching their daughters not to be respectful of their husbands or their boyfriends. Their mothers are telling them that they don't need a man. This is why they grow up alone. And the fact is that I'm a man, but I need a man. Because when I have to pick up a heavy couch, I need a man to pick up the other end so that he can help me carry that couch out the door. When I call the cops because I'm having trouble, I don't want two women to show up. I want two strong men to show up so that they can handle their business and so that I know I'm well protected. I'm a man, and when I'm in danger, I don't call women to protect me or to have my back. I call my boys because I need a man. How is it that I'm a man and I need a man? I need my brother. I call people who are reliable and dependable. But yet we teach our daughters, women teach their daughters, that they don't need a man. Who's going to help her move her furniture when it's time to move? Women? Who's going to help her fix her car and change the tire when she has a flat tire? Another woman? Is she going to call her sister? Is she going to call her aunt? Is she going to call her mother? Or is she going to call her father, her brothers, her boyfriend, her friend who's a guy? You instill nonsense into your daughters, and when your daughters grow up, they instill nonsense into theirs. And this is why women are alone. This is why women have to carry most of the weight in their relationships, at home, at work, and then they wonder why they're lonely and why they're depressed. Because in the end, you taught your daughter stupidity, you taught your daughter nonsense, rather than teaching her to honor her man, to respect her man, and to know that in the end, she needs a man just like a man needs a woman. We all need each other. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you think. If you have the nerve to teach your daughter that she doesn't need a man, then you have the nerve to live your life alone with no help, no husband, no man to help you support your children, to help you pay your rent, to help you move your furniture, to help you change your tire, or to help you fix your car when it breaks down. Because in the end, we need men. A man needs a man just like a woman needs a man. Unfortunately, you want to teach your daughters these things rather than respecting your daughters and teaching your daughter to grow up to be a good wife, a good mother, a good sister, a good student, a classy woman. We need to be smart people. We need to use common sense. This world is falling apart. It's falling apart because we teach each other that we don't need each other. What do we need? Dogs? Cats? This is why the majority of Americans own a pet, because women don't need men, but they need their dogs. This is why the majority of women at home in the US own a dog or a cat, because they want affection that they should be getting from another person, another human being, someone of the opposite sex, to caress them, to hold them, to kiss them, to touch them, to give them that emotional support. Instead, they get emotional support from a dog, from a cat, from their pets. How about, ladies, you start being a woman and start acting like a woman and seek emotional support from a real man? And you, gentlemen, grow the fuck up, stop acting like bitches, and start treating your women like women. And let's start showing these women that if they need emotional support, they don't need a dog. They don't need a cat. They don't need a pet. They got us because we know how to handle our business. We know how to touch a woman. We know how to make a woman feel special, how to make her feel wanted, how to make her feel needed. In the end, it's all about us. It's about each other. Women need to stop disrespecting men, and men need to stop disrespecting women. And once that starts to happen, you're going to see that the rate of depression in America will drop. It's up to us to raise our children. It's not the babysitter's job to do it. If our children don't grow up to be the men and women that they should be, in the end, it's not their fault, people. It is our fault. It is the generation before. It is their job to raise the new generation of men and women. Because in the end, the serial killers are going to be our children. The rapists are going to be our children. The abusive husbands are going to be our children. The women who refuse to take care of their children are going to be our children. The prostitutes are going to be our children. Everyone who is bad has a mother. Everyone who is good has a father. These people don't fall from the sky. They are made. They're made. Evil people, bad people are created. They are not born. Let's make our children to grow up to be good men and women who are willing to protect us when we get older, who are ready and willing to do these things for us the same way we did it for them. Because if we don't do these things for our children, when we grow old, they're not going to do it for us. And we're going to grow old alone and we will die alone.